Filling a journal is a personal thing, whether you're writing in it, making embellishments to decorate it, or simply playing around with paint. In this week's video I'm doing all three of these. I'm filling a page in this journal, and if you love making and filling journals too, then hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. I've got lots more videos and ideas to come. I'll start by making this envelope, and I'll be stamping and painting those flowers. I'm writing some positive journaling notes today on this cute little page, and I'm going to have some fun with my palette of paint here. So let's just tuck that away to the side and we'll make an envelope. I'll take you through it step by step. It really is very easy. All you need is a pair of scissors, a bone folder if you have one, and a scoring board. You don't need an envelope template. What you do need is a stick of glue. This works with all sorts of papers. I like to use book pages. I particularly like to use ones that have an image that goes with a theme. I have a few examples to show you here of ones I've been making. This little one, as you can see, I have covered with some vintage papers and scrapbook paper and a few little bits of stamp and paint. And I have a little stack here of ones I've been making with glossy paper, albeit autumnal colours, so those rich dark russety colours. The envelope's slightly larger because obviously the book page was bigger, but I really enjoyed making those and making best use of the images. Monochrome envelopes are always useful, so these are just some simple pages from a tennis book, and here's a few that I made a while ago. I have a little video on these. So these are a larger page and I've stamped with an image of holly and just painted that in, sometimes with green and red berries. Here's a few in the children's book page that I'm using today, so let's just go through that in a few easy steps. The page itself is about 22 centimetres by 17, and that's roughly 8.5 inches by 6.5 inches. I'm picking a page that goes with my October theme today, and I think perhaps this one with the walnut will work. The first thing I'm going to do is use these lines to score the page. I'm going to add the envelope as a flip out to the page, a bit like I did here in July. I added this envelope, you see it folds out, and I can add lots of lovely little bits of paper that we can journal on and add notes and lists. So just tucking those in, putting them away, and I'll start by scoring the page for the top and bottom flaps using ridge number 2 and also number 3, and I'll explain in a minute why I chose those ridges. For this page I want to preserve the walnut, so I'm going to have that on the back as I score, and here we go down ridge number 1 to make those side flaps, and I'm just doing that on either side. It's probably easiest to make a few gentle scores rather than one hard one so you don't tear the paper. Scoring down ridge number 2 and then ridge number 3, and what we have is the basic components for making an envelope that's incredibly easy without the need for a template. At this stage it's probably best to use a bone folder or a ruler or some means of making those creases really crisp. So I like to do that with my little bone folder, and I just work around so that the flaps will fold easily when I come to cut on all 4 sides. And this is what it looks like with 4 neat folds. And the ridges in the scoring board that I chose were the ones which allow it to fold over with about a centimetre overlap. So that's here, you want about an extra 1 to 1.5 centimetres. I'm going to snip here and here, just either side of the line, to make the bottom flap. So using my scissors I can pretty much do that in one snip, just to the left of that crease, and then a snip just above it, and then I can do exactly the same on the left hand side, and this creates the flap for the bottom of the envelope. And in this case we've also been able to protect that image of the walnut. So just finishing off at the bottom, and then we can make some easy snips at the top, and these are just slightly wider than the ones at the bottom, so the same idea applies. Cut to the left of the scored line and then snip just below, and you can see that I've made it a slightly wider angle. replicate on the other side, trying to be even but really just doing it by eye. It doesn't need to be perfect, it will be good enough. And now we've done all the cutting here and here, it's time to stick it together. I like to use a glue stick rather than liquid glue so that I don't get that paper rippling effect. I've definitely had that before and it wasn't ideal. So I'm using a glue stick to put that on the bottom flap, and I'm making sure that I leave a little bit of a space just here so that I don't stick the flap to the front side of the envelope. And here we have a little embellishment ready to use, and we've preserved the picture of the walnut. I want to put an autumnal coloured flower on the right hand side here today, so I'm just thinking through whether to use one in these deeper rusty shades, in the yellow colours, the yellow tones, and shall I use this vintage dictionary paper or something perhaps a little bit more modern. This sheet is a little bit more glossy, it's a different shape and size. I could even use monochrome and not paint it, but I think I've landed on something that will be maybe yellowy, using a page from this vintage English dictionary which I've been using rather a lot. You can see that it's gone down a little bit. So I'm just gently tearing a page out of that. It is quite delicate because it is quite old, but it's a lovely aged vintage colour. I'm using this gorgeous flower stamp today and just a plain black ink pad. I'm going to be painting my flower using these watercolour paints. It's a 36 pan palette from Arteza, and you can see that it's had a lot of use. A simple water brush pen will work today, and the first thing I'm going to do is put some ink on the stamp, make sure it's really well inked. I want a strong black image that makes it easy to paint. It's a pigment ink stamp pad from a shop here in England called Hobbycraft, and it cost me about £1. So really good value for a basic craft supply that now and again we probably need to repurchase. And here we have a crisp black image ready to paint, ready to put in the journal on this right hand side. It needs to be a little bit smaller than the page, so I will need to cut it down. I don't mind it sticking out a little bit, but first let's do some painting. Let's have fun with colour. Let's get some of those rusty yellow ochres on the page. I realised how much I enjoyed painting and maybe sometimes drawing flowers when I drew and painted a sunflower a few weeks ago in a journal spread, and I just thought I would have a go here at something that was perhaps a little bit easier. Easy is good in my world, and it certainly helps the process of relaxing and enjoying putting colour on the page, particularly when it's a book page. For some reason I find that more enjoyable, I think, than painting on watercolour paper. So all I'm doing today is just really appreciating some of those rusty orange brown shades that are emerging around us, and turning this flower, which probably is meant to be more summery colours, into those more autumnal October colours, into petals that have got those yellow ochre hues. So I'm adding paint to the page. I'm using some of the techniques again that I learnt when I created the sunflower, so putting some paint down and then circling a bit around the centre, and sometimes using little flicking movements from the centre outwards, which gives the flower just a little bit of depth and a little bit of 3D. The image has these pretty little poppy seed heads, and I'm painting those in very gentle shades of brown and then adding just a little bit more pigment at the base of each of the poppy seed heads. And this is my attempt to make it look perhaps a little bit more 3D. Then I'm moving on to the luscious green of the leaves, varying the colour a little bit but keeping the wash quite light, keeping it quite transparent so that it doesn't overcloud on the book page. I like to see the text coming through the leaves and the flowers, and for me that's partly what makes it so interesting and fun to stamp and paint on a page. Time to pack away the paint. I do have a discount code for all of the Arteza supplies that I've used here today, so I'll put that in the description box down below. Here I'm just testing out the size, how much of this book page I want to retain, where I want to fold and tear it. And it is actually very easy to tear. In fact, it would be easy to make a mistake here because it's so delicate, because it is quite aged. I just line it up, test by eye where I want it to go. It can definitely overlap. I quite like pages in a junk journal that are of different sizes. I think I need to take a little bit off the bottom here, so trimming that off as well. And now I have a focal point for the whole of the journal spread, and to help me see what else I want to do on the page, I think it's good to stick this down at this point. Sometimes when I'm doing a journal spread, I can feel that there are almost too many choices in the design, so I like to put something down and use that to make other decisions about what else to colour in, to stick on and to add. On the left here I want to take away some of that plain white, so I'm also using another vintage book page and just sticking that down to act as a background, and that's a really easy way to progress a page. It's a tip for taking away some of that hard blank white without necessarily having to do any painting, for example. Again, this page is a little bit on the wide side, so I'm folding it over and then just delicately and gently tearing that down to reduce the size, but I do like the ripped edge. This gives us a little background on which to place the envelope, and I'm going to stick that down by the flap so that we still see the walnut image on the front. I do have a question, something you could help me out with. Does it work to use white and those creamy vintage papers together? What do you think? Drop me a comment down below. I've picked out a few other papers that I'd like to use in the spread. I'm not sure quite how they will go. And I also have this stencil that I've been wanting to use. I'm not quite sure how that will work in, but I am dying to try it. I definitely want to use this lovely image of acorns and oak leaves. It's one that I pulled from I think it's a children's book, and I think that might work on the left, but I don't want to get in the way of my walnuts, so again I'm just folding over the bottom and tearing that off, and that will mean I get a lovely layering effect which really starts to make the page come together. I do like that, so I'm just sticking that down with my glue stick. Do they feel like autumn colours? Does it work? What do you think? And now it's time to fill in the middle here, and I've been cutting out some definitions, so I used another book, a children's book, and I snipped out some definitions, and the one that I've chosen here today is deserve. Deserving, deserve, to have a right or be entitled to. Merit, he deserved promotion. Deservedly. Rightly. Justifiably. And as the motto for my channel here is living your best life, I think the word deserve fits quite well. I think it's a good one to use on the page. So I am creating a bit of a background here with just a little piece of brown craft paper. It's actually junk from, I think, the inside of a roll of wrapping paper, and I'm going to put that little definition on the bottom there. I'm just snipping it down, reducing the amount of spare white space. If you'd like some more tips and ideas for your own journal spreads, then check out a few of my other videos, and I'll leave a link to a playlist in the description box down below. And now deserve is on the page, and I just need to bridge this gap somehow. I need something complementary to stick on that gap so that I don't see too much of the white behind. I love this shade of green and I love the spots, so I'm just tearing a piece off and putting that down with the ripped edge on the left. For some reason I just feel like the torn side needs to be underneath the envelope flap there. And just before I begin to add some notes on that craft cardstock, I just want to make the page pop a bit and add a bit of bling. So I have some rose gold washi here that I'm putting on that green spotty paper behind the envelope, and I'm balancing the picture a bit by bringing it further down the page, so a little piece in the middle there just underneath the definition of deserve. and I'm delighted to have an excuse to crack open my watercolour pencils. I haven't used them for some time. I want to take this dark brown shade here and use it to give that definition a little bit of a border. And the joy of the watercolour pencils is you can be quite accurate and build up the colour as much as you want, and then apply water with a water brush just to make that pigment melt and merge. So I've used a shade of dark brown, and then I'm bringing in some green, and that will blend a bit with the brown but also retain some of its own integrity. So using a little bit of water as well as the water brush, not soaking the craft cardstock too much, don't get that too wet. I'm just allowing the pigment to start to melt and emerge, and I end up having something that really bounds the definition of deserve. I also want something underneath the flower on the right here, so I'm stealing a bit more from a digi that I used last week. This is a piece of digi paper from Tracy Fox. I will leave a link to her channel in the description box down below. And I just want a snippety piece underneath the flowers. It's a vintage style, so it seems to go with the dictionary page behind. And again, I've just ripped it so that it's got maybe a more natural edge. Do I need a little bit more washi here? I probably do. I want to use this black spotty washi. It feels rather bold, so I'm slightly concerned about how much emphasis it places down here. I have a second piece I'm trying, and when I step back and look at the page, I just don't feel it's right. So again, the joy of washi, I can peel it off. So I'm just taking that off, and although I like it, it just needs to be less dominant. So I'm halving it lengthways and adding it back. And feel free to adjust as you go when you do your page. If you like something, that's great. If you don't like it, try it in a different way, or just carry on and enjoy the process. Because one thing I have learnt in junk journaling and creating spreads is sometimes the best pictures emerge actually from a mistake. I'm taking a gel pen in black, this one's also Arteza, and I'm making a few personal notes on this little memo pad, and this came from a subscription box that I was kindly sent called Your Creative Studio. And all I'm doing at this point when I've created a journal spread is just really being in full flow, and I'm putting down the thoughts that are at the front of my mind. And this page is about jotting down something personal that will make life a little bit better. And for me that means finding the time to put ourselves first, not something we all do all the time, and probably rightly so, but sometimes putting ourselves first is just the best thing to do, and we need to prioritise that on occasion. So I'm just putting that down, and I think if I write it down, if I journal about things, personally I'm more likely to do them. So that goes on my little memo page, and that is going to go inside the envelope. I'm adding a teensy weensy little bit of that black washi tape at the top there, and it's time to tuck away that little personal memo, putting it in the envelope. In last week's video I declared my love of lists. I love to put lists in my journal, and today is no exception. So in this journal spread, what I wanted to do is put down just a few ideas for peaceful things to do in October, making best use of the environment that I have around me, and just appreciating the days and the weather and the colours. So first on my list is kick the leaves away, make them scrunch underfoot. When did you last do that? Collecting conkers, because for me that very much brings out a memory from when I was a child, and memories are good. Makes you feel good thinking about these things in the past that gave you happiness. And my third point is, as I often do, appreciating the colours around us, and indeed the early morning mist. It's different in a morning when I wake up now. It's got that chill and freshness. Be mindful of each moment. So just appreciating how, as the seasons and the months move forwards, we can recognise the differences and bring some of that into our writing and our journaling and the colours, and linking that back to that little definition I deserve this. I think we do. I think you do. And this is a journal page from me with hopefully a few useful and interesting tips and ideas for you. I hope that you've really enjoyed the process. If you have, then hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell, because I have lots more ideas and videos to come, and I'd love to see you next week.